The secret to success in buying bronze coins is simply to avoid ones that are stained and ugly, even if the price is a bargain. Let someone else buy them. Don't buy a problem. It will always remain a problem. It doesn't get any better, and it could get worse. Richard Snow remarked, "There is no price too low for a problem coin." Hello and welcome back to the History of Money. Today I'll be discussing one of my favorite coin types, the Indian head cent. Going back to my earliest days of collecting coins as a child, I've always loved the design of 19th century coins with their profiles of liberty, the dentils around the edge, and the chubby lettering. If you consider yourself a coin collector, then you know the name Whitman. These folders, originally called penny boards, first appeared during the Great Depression. It's a cardboard display with die-cut holes in neat little rows for each year and mint mark combinations. Many coin collectors like me started their hobby with a Lincoln cent, going through piles of change and filling the blanks in my penny board. However, at a recent coin show, a dealer was selling a 1930s vintage penny board for small cents, 1857 to 1909, and it was mostly complete. I had to buy it. I'd been working on filling a green Littleton folder, but I felt limited by the exposed format to include my better examples. But this one, amazingly, is a fine example of Raymond Waite's coin boards, which have plastic windows just like Dansko albums. I was free to upgrade my collection, and right now I'm endeavoring to learn how to be a connoisseur of chocolate. Chocolate brown. There are several ways that these old bronze planchets age, and while some prefer wood grain and others can afford the finest red examples all slabbed in matching holders, all these coins, with the exception of two, were all made only 95 miles away from Hershey in Philadelphia. Let's start with the first small cent coin. I'm so used to the size of the Lincoln cent that I've never thought to ask, why did the mint switch from large coppers in 1857? During that recession before the Civil War, the copper price dropped and they became too bulky. The mint dropped to the large cent and the half cent and settled on a 4.6 gram planchet that was slightly larger than the dime at 19 millimeters. In freedom units, that's 3/4 of an inch. So you can line up 4 pennies and it'll take up exactly 3 inches. The composition used was an 88% copper, 12% nickel abomination that looked almost white when new. This was the first use of copper-nickel for United States coins, and they were so different than the old copper coinage that they began to be called white cents, or nicks. They aged into an ugly brassy ochre color, but they were America's first nickels. The mint pre-released them to the president and legislators as a pattern coin dated 1856, as a sort of promotional campaign to get Congress to sign the change into law. Fortunately, it was an easy sell because these fat little poker chips were given one of the greatest designs ever created by the former chief engraver of the United States Mint, Christian Gobrecht, the Flying Eagle. Gobrecht's Flying Eagle design was chiefly used on a limited number of silver dollars dated 1836 and 1839. It's a portrait of a bald eagle which, for many years, was a familiar sight in the streets of Philadelphia. Peter was the pet of the Philadelphia Mint and generally known as the mint bird. The reverse motif of the new cent was not original either, but was a copy of the agricultural wreath containing wheat, corn, cotton, and tobacco devised by Longacre for use on the 1854 gold $1 and $3 coins. This design was difficult to strike properly, so it only lasted for 2 years before James Longacre used Peter's wing feathers in 1859 to crown a proper profile of liberty. By numismatic legend, the facial features of the goddess Liberty on the obverse of the Indian head cent were based on the features of Longacre's daughter, Sarah. The tale runs that when she was at the mint one day, she tried on the headdress of one of a number of Native Americans who were visiting, and her father sketched her. However, Sarah Longacre was 30 years old and married in 1858, not 12 as in the tale, and Longacre himself stated that the face was based on the statue Crouching Venus from Salona, which was on loan from the Vatican museums. These tales were apparently extant at the time, as Mint Director Snowden, writing in November of 1858, denied that the coin was based on any human features in the Longacre family. Scholars today agree that the story is essentially false. By giving Lady Liberty the male war bonnet of eagle feathers, Longacre paid respect to the brave Aboriginal people of this land, and it was seen as a uniquely American emblem of identity to replace the Phrygian cap. Art historians have noted that since Liberty's portrait was based on a Roman goddess, the allegorical inconsistency highlighted the artificial mishmash of its imagery. Look, the irony of this coin is not lost on me, but I'm not here today to judge the historical facts with today's sensibilities, because that dishonors all that we have struggled to accomplish in the hearts of this nation. So, instead, let's track the 50 years run of the Indian head penny. After the release of this very popular new design, the mint still felt that the reverse laurel wreath needed revision, and so Longacre decided that an oak wreath should surround the denomination, with 3 arrows tied in a ribbon at the bottom and a shield placed at the top. I have to admit this little Union shield makes no sense thematically. It makes the design the most awkward cent reverse since the chain links of 1793. The U.S. Mint has had a long history of making the first year of a design change be unique before correcting things. It's just unusual that so many changes happened to the cent in the 7 years between 1857 and 1864. So the country's first nickel was the small cent, but during the Civil War, coins were hoarded and nickel was in short supply. Privateers produced their own cent tokens out of bronze, and in mid-1864, the mint in Philadelphia wised up and changed the composition of bronze, and reducing the thickness to a much more reasonable 2 millimeters. The bronze planchets were standard for the penny from 1864 to 1982, 19 millimeters in diameter and amassing 3.1 grams. But Longacre still wasn't done. In the latter part of 1864, he added his initial L to the ribbon at the back of the bonnet. These bronze pieces are often referred to as 1864L and 1864 no L. The L is known on 1863 dated pieces in both metals and on 1864 dated copper nickel pieces. Some of these issues, all extremely rare, were likely struck at a later date. The bronze cent was immediately accepted by the public, and heavy production of the issue soon alleviated the shortage of cents. On New Year's Day in 1869, James Longacre died suddenly at his home in Philadelphia, so he didn't live to see the long economic depression that followed the Civil War in the 1870s. The Act of March 3, 1871 allowed the redemption of cents and other minor coins in lots of $20 or more. Pursuant to this act, over 30 million copper-nickel cents, both of the Indian head and the Flying Eagle designs, were redeemed. The mint melted these for recoinage. 55 million bronze cents were also sold to the government. Beginning in 1874, the mint re-released these in response to commercial requests for cents, lowering the demand for new coins. In 1873, Chief Engraver William Barber made the 3 look really dumb, with huge blobs for serifs that closed it up and make it look like an 8. But after Chief Coiner Snowden complained about this, Engraver Barber modified his work to a more open 3, creating 2 date varieties for that year. Because the old coinage flooded back into circulation and reduced the need for new minting, the issues from 1870 to 1877 rarely exceeded 10 million, culminating in a mere 852,500 minted in 1877. Even this figure is probably exaggerated because there are many sources claiming that over half of this production figure was never released and later remelted. This key date cost me more than the rest of the set combined, and it is a very fine example indeed. After 1881, production numbers went way up. In the early 1880s, the post office decreased the basic rate for letters to 2 cents. This change both increased the demand for cents and decreased the demand for the 3-cent nickel, which was abolished in 1890. In most years of the 1880s, there were large issues of the Indian head cents. The exception was in the mid-1880s, when poor economic times led to less demand for minor coins. No cents or 5-cent nickels were minted after February 1885 until near the end of 1886. Production of undated dies into which the year of issue could be punched did continue, and during the hiatus in coin production, Chief Engraver Charles E. Barber modified the design, removing light outlines between the lettering on the obverse and the rest of the design, and making other changes. This led to two types for the 1886 Indian head cent, which may be distinguished. On the type 1, the lowest feather on the obverse points between the I and the C in America, and while on type 2 it points between the C and the final A. Neither of these are rarer than the other. Then in 1888, the best known date variety was made, when a die dated 1887 was overpunched with the 1888 date. You could just make out the ends of the 7 on the left and the side of the 8. The economic panic of 1893 again caused a decrease in the number of cents produced, as coins accumulated in private hands were spent, creating a surplus. But most of the wild Indians you'll find today were minted 1897 forward, when annual production exceeded 50 million. It is interesting to note that although branch mints had been around since 1835, they only met local needs for producing gold and silver coins. All minor change was exclusively minted at the home facility in Philadelphia. However, in 1907, the director of the branch mint in San Francisco, Frank A. Leach, was appointed to be in charge of the whole operation in Philadelphia. He knew that the demand for minor coinage was increasing in the western United States, so he authorized production of pennies in San Francisco in 1908 and at Denver in 1911. All three mints also began producing nickels in 1912. You can find the new mint mark in the same location that it was on the dime, on the reverse below the wreath, so always check when you see pennies dated 1908 or 1909. The 1909 S Indian cent, with a mintage of 309,000 pieces, is the lowest mintage of the series and commands a premium as a key date, because dies for the Lincoln cent went into use in August of 1909. That's basically it for their 50-year lifespan. So now let's discuss how to grade the condition of your Indian head cents. First, a word about proof coins. They were made by the mint in very small quantities for sale directly to collectors at a premium. The specially prepared dies were highly polished, struck slowly, and handled with care afterward. For this reason, most of them were saved. For example, we know that 2,350 proof Indian head cents were struck in 1878. Likely 1,500 or so still survive today. On the other hand, circulation strikes were placed into commerce and soon became worn. The survival of mint state coins is a matter of chance in proportion to the original mint figures, and only a tiny fraction of 1% have survived in mint state. If you want to get really good at grading, make sure you know the coin's composition and how different metals wear differently. Also, it is important to recognize the difference between die wear and coin wear. Worn dies will result in mushy details, but not the abrasion that comes from circulation. This is really hard to determine from a photo, and you really need to see the coin in person under magnification and sufficient lighting. Then there is the matter of copper turning from red to brown. This happens when copper is exposed to air for any length of time, and this has nothing to do with the grade or the original mint luster of the coin. This chemical reaction is called toning, and I would be really cautious about buying any red copper coin below a 58. Anything less than 90% redness is no longer red, RD, and is labeled red-brown, RB. Less than 10% redness is considered to be brown, BN. A mint state coin has been determined to have absolutely no trace of wear from circulation. Mint state, however, is a range, really, from a flawless coin on one end to a total proof screw on the other. MS-67 is virtually flawless with only microscopic imperfections. An MS-65 coin will only have some small blemish that we can see with the naked eye. It might have light finger marks or a few minor nicks. MS-63 will have noticeable detracting contact marks or minor blemishes. It is important to know that these marks were the result from being knocked around in mint bags and not from collector mishandling. The normal color for an MS-63 is red-brown, so watch out for evidence of repeated dipping. MS-62 can have many light contact marks, but no traces of legitimate wear. MS-60 is not a common grade, and usually reserved for coins that are blotchy and beat up from knocking around with their neighbors in mint bags. Marks, scratches, and nicks abound. Just the slightest hint of friction on the highest points of the design will drop the coin to AU58, even though otherwise the coin looks absolutely stunning. That is why it's important not to touch higher grade coins with bare hands, because you can quickly lose 20% of the selling price through improper handling. That said, I would still take a beautiful AU58 any day over a nasty MS-60. Let's look at the first places to wear on the obverse. AU58 will have light abrasion on the hair above Liberty's ear and on the hair curl to the right of the ribbon. AU55 only has a trace of wear on the hair above the ear. Considerable mint luster is still present. Again, this luster has no correlation with the percentage of redness. AU53 has light wear on those two spots. Don't mistake a weak strike or dye wear for this amount of circulation wear. They're similar but in different spots. The feathers are intact. Practically, no genuine redness lasts on copper coins graded below 53, and original mint luster disappears from coins graded lower than 40. AU50 has more noticeable wear on the high points, the hair above the ear, the center of the ribbon, and the curl to the right of the ribbon. Significant mint luster is still present, though usually toned brown. XF45 adds some wear on the end of the ribbon, but the ribbon's diamond pattern and letters in Liberty are very plain. There may be traces of wear on the feather tips. XF40 still has well-defined feathers and Liberty is bold. Most of the diamond design shows plainly, with more wear on the ribbon end, the hair above the ear, and the hair curl to the right of the ribbon. Scattered marks are normal at this grade, usually on the cheek and in the fields. VF35. Look for small flat spots of wear on the tips of the feathers, ribbon, and hair ends. The hair still shows half of the details, but the lower ribbon is no longer separated from that hair curl to its right. There's usually a flat spot on the cheek, but it hasn't spread down to the jaw yet. VF30, light wear is evident over the entire surface, with design details beginning to flatten, such as the eyebrow, the tip of the nose, and the cheek. Wear shows on the BE of Liberty, but it is sharp overall. VF20, you could still spot the L on the ribbon, but the lower hair is now fully fused with the diamond ribbon. There is moderate wear with evident loss of detail, but there's still a lot of meat on the bone. The feather tips are flat, and her pearls are a knobby blob. The nostril is still separate, but there's no separation between her cheek and chin. Fine 15. The legend and date are still sharp and clear. Liberty is readable, and there are still details in the feathers. Fine 12. Liberty is weak, but to make this grade, the word must be discernible. About half of the details are worn flat. The nostril is now finally merged with the cheek. Very good 10. A total of 3 letters in Liberty must be visible, but the amount of wear on the feathers is a better indicator. The rim should still be full. Very good 8. The rim should be full, depending on the strike. The central detail is now worn flat. The legend and the date are defined, but well worn. G6. You can still see an indication that feathers are stuck into the headdress. The rim is still delineated at this grade, but the pearls are fused with the bust. G4. You could still see her eye, ear, and mouth, but otherwise the portrait is mostly an outline. The feathers are flat and fused together, and both the legend and the date are weak but complete. Part of the rim is usually gone. AG3. Most of the legend is worn into the rim. The portrait is now all but a silhouette. The date is clearly readable but weak. Fair 2. The entire coin is worn flat with only traces of the peripheral lettering still visible. Poor 1. The coin is only identifiable as to type, date, and mint mark if applicable. Now, when collecting Indian head cents, you need to make the best use of your money. Richard Snow says in his book that it's important to know what not to buy as well as what you should acquire. To do that, become a connoisseur. You should consider 20 coins before buying the one you want to own. Cleaning bronze coins strips its surface and makes the chemically active copper metal even more susceptible to atmospheric effects. Most dipped pieces soon become blotchy or unevenly colored. Most specialists agree that a run of nicely matched chocolate brown coins is much more desirable than the far more costly collection of blotchy, mint-state red-brown pieces. Quality is the key word that you, as a connoisseur, should always keep in mind. Quality first, price second. The secret to success in buying bronze coins is simply to avoid ones that are stained and ugly, even if the price is a bargain. Let someone else buy them. Don't buy a problem. It will always remain a problem. It doesn't get any better, and it could get worse. Richard Snow remarked, "There is no price too low for a problem coin." Any flying eagle or Indian head, if it is as brilliant as it was when first minted, with a bright edge, is a coin that has been dipped. No matter how careful the caretakers of these coins have been, there will always be some light toning. This is reflected by examining coins held in old-time collections that were assembled in the 19th century. Also, certified holders will say nothing about the strike, weak average, or with full details. It's up to you to determine this. When you find a coin, first determine what the grade is. The grade listed on a certified holder or noted by a dealer on the cardboard is simply the starting point in the buying process. Next, have an approximate grade in mind for each coin that you are seeking. If you're looking for a rare 1877, as I was, and have $1,000 to spend, there's not much sense in asking to see AU or other high-grade coins, nor is there any reason to waste your time looking at well-worn pieces in G4 grade. No matter what grade you're looking for, reject any coins that seem to be overgraded. I realize that you'll need some experience to do this, otherwise you'll not know accurate grading from inaccurate. But my next piece of advice is to get a first impression of overall eye appeal. Get it under good lighting in person. There we go. The internet gives sellers an opportunity to get the lighting just right that can give a misleading impression of the eye appeal. Old copper seems to have problems with dark, blotchy, stained coins, and it's important to reject a coin if it isn't attractive and look for another. Don't start that compromise game in your head, because it probably just means you're impatient to fill the holes in your collection, and you will have buyer's remorse, especially when you find the right coin and have to take a loss to sell this one. So be a connoisseur and take your time. Third, get out a magnifier and check the sharpness of the strike. The easiest place to check is the tips of the feathers. Is the surface quality satiny with full sheen, or were the dies worn, showing metal flow and granularity? Is the planchet of good quality, or is it rough? Finding a good coin with all these check marks is a realistic goal for all the basic dates in this series. If the coin you're considering has passed these tests, finally, you can establish a market price. If the coin is common in the grade that you want, then shop around and wait until you find the right one for the right price. If the market price is $250, then don't pay $350. But if you find one offered to you for below wholesale, realize that a lot of dealer-to-dealer sales goes on at a show before the doors open to the public, so this usually means that other dealers haven't snapped this bargain up, and it isn't a choice coin. You're lucky in that hardly anyone looks at sharpness and overall quality. 90% of collectors only look at the certified grade. Each and every issue does exist with full details, so bide your time until you find them. When you do, the market premium will be very low over a typical coin of lower quality. Hey, thanks again for sticking it out to the end with me. I really appreciate your time and interest in coins. The Indian Heads is a really amazing year set to put together, and I hope you enjoy picking out your own set of small cents and more fully enjoying each one now that you know them better. Until next time, in God we trust.